Hello, today we are going to meet with somebody who I've interacted with quite a lot over the last few years. His name is Julian Bale, and he is probably one of the busiest and most efficient people that I've known. Hi, Julian, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine. You?
I'm doing okay. It's been a scramble today, but I really appreciate you helping us out with this conversation today.
Okay, my pleasure.
So let's get right into it. Julian, why don't you give us a little bit about your background first?
Yeah, okay. I'm started to make some creation, some art stuff since I could say 20 years ago. I have been already every time interested by making sound, and I started to build my own synths, and I played a lot with a generator, the before Reactor by Native Instruments, and I discovered Max. I could say, I don't know, 15 years ago, something like that. So I was really interested by sound at first. It wasn't my business, I could say, or my day job, but just a big passion. I was studying biology at the university in France, and I spent a lot of nights building tracks and playing with step sequencers and stuff like that. At this moment, I wasn't drawing visuals or designing visuals at all, but I was really interested into making that. And I can say I chose to really work on my art only a few years ago. It's about 5 years, no more. I quit my day job to make only music and visuals. And everything started with my Protodeck massive hardware controller I built using a MIDI box framework. And this has been my really first step, I could say, in this world, in this universe. And I made some workshops, and at this moment I found a lot of people interested by my stuff, and maybe I was more trusty with myself at this moment, because this was for me, this was just a big and a huge passion at this moment, and
Sure, that makes sense. It's interesting you bring up the Protodeck, because I think for a lot of people, that's when you first popped up on the scene. It was when controllers were just starting to get, used commonly. Prior to that, most people that were performing had a laptop. They would use the trackpad, and the old joke about how it looked like everyone was looking at their mail was pretty much it. And then all of a sudden, in my memory, sort of simultaneous with Robert Henke coming out with his sort of like unique controller, you also came out with the huge prototype. That thing was enormous, wasn't it?
Yeah, actually, it was around 100 knobs and a lot of LEDs. Yeah, a real big machine, and a heavy machine too.
Right.
Yeah, and Robert Henke was one of my inspiration at this moment, because we had I figured out I could build my own stuff and just play with it without looking at the computer. I was really interested by forgetting about my screen and my keyboard, my trackpad. I wanted to have kind of music instruments, or something
Right.
like that.
Right. The idea of I think one of the things that happened at that time was people really started looking at the computer and a controller as being an instrument rather than being, I don't know, being like the center of their attention. But
Yeah.
and I remember seeing some videos of you playing the protodeck, and it was clear that you not only built this thing and 100 knobs, I can't even imagine doing that, but that you had sort of like gotten so used to it that you used the protodeck in the way that like a guitar player would use a guitar.
Yeah, actually, I was interested by playing with sequences, and I was already using Ableton Live, and I wanted to almost to forget about my sequencer. I wanted to play with my clip matrix as with an instrument, because I had organized my whole live set to be able to be really intuitive in my playing.
Right.
I could say, yeah, I had some tracks with drums or stuff like rhythmic patterns, and on the other side, I had some low noise. I didn't want to write a proper title or a proper name on my track. I just wanted to have some, I could say, some feelings
Sure.
by my live set, you know. So I knew on stage that I had this kind of sound in that place, but not precisely a bass or a drums, but maybe a pattern about rhythmic, but maybe some little noise, and
So
I enjoyed that.
Right.
a
So
lot.
that's kind of how. That's interesting because I'd never really thought about that being a way to set up your sets rather than being very specific about like the named scenes and the named tracks or whatever.
Yeah.
Instead, focusing on having a bunch of feelings or a bunch of like emotions available, and then as you feel the crowd moving one direction or another, you could very quickly move from one emotional content or concept to another. That's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and actually, and currently, I'm trying to do that with my new live set. For me, it is a big jump into another, I could say, universe, because I want to use only sequencers and not clips anymore. I could say, I want to play with sequencer as with another instrument. I want to maybe to load a preset maybe, and to play with this preset during around 10 minutes. So I want to be able to maybe offset some sequences to make some kind of rotation into my sequences, and I want to be able to change eventually my micro timing, I could say, not only big steps as I could say 1/16.
Right, 16 months, right.
Yeah. I want to be able to go inside my sequence, and all this stuff have to trigger some visuals. So I want to be able to play with my sequence, not only with a lot of sequences already written, you know.
Right.
Because I tried to make a post on my blog about that. My blog address is julienbayle.net/blog, and
I'll put that in the header of the.
Okay,
the show.
cool. Yeah, maybe it could be interesting for people, because I wanted to explain that I want to be able to create almost an infinite number of sequences on stage. Not only 10, not even only 100, but I want to be able to create and to improve my way of playing a lot of sequences, and sequencers are here for us to make that, of course. But we have to maybe to use or to customize some sequencers to be able to be really played on stage, because sometimes we can only change sequence. Okay, it is very good, but I need to alter sequence. So I need to start with a base, a sequence as a
starting point.
Yeah, and then to alter this and alter maybe timing, maybe velocities, maybe even the playing rate. But not only playing rate, maybe to make some bounce when the sequence is played until the end, instead of going back to the beginning, maybe we can bounce the playing cursor,
Right.
Something like that. I love one sequencer by Native Instrument made with Reactor. His name is GoBox.
Oh yes, right.
It is basically I think I will make a kind of max version, because I need to put everything at some point into Max for Live or into Max. So I think I will try to translate it into Max, maybe. But I already customized it a lot using Reactor. And now I'm able on stage to play with it, to have multi-channel outputs, and to have even a lot of MIDI notes from each channel, so I can trigger my visuals in a deeper way,
right? Well, one of the things, and you kind of point this out, is that sequences and working with MIDI, in a way, seems to be a lot more, I don't know, what's the word, maybe malleable, or it's something that you can adjust a lot more in real time. And I'm seeing more and more people sort of moving away from huge sets of audio loops and audio clips and moving back into MIDI sequencing, because MIDI sequencing gives you so much more flexibility once you start playing. And I think that's interesting, because I was around when MIDI first started, and I remember people being really excited about it and then saying, if only, I can't wait until MIDI goes away and we can work with audio directly, right?
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden, people having had the chance to work with audio directly realize that by working with a clip, you're still sort of locked into that sound. You can manipulate timing and you can manipulate many things, but there's a certain amount of creativity that's sort of taken away because it's already rendered as audio.
Myself, I'm more interested by altering things real time. So audio clips are really interesting, because you can, I could say, embed some complexities, some precise stuff inside an audio sample. But on stage, when I want to alter some timing, some stuff like that, I have to use some choppers, some audio choppers, some buffer shuffler, something like that. But I can't obviously have this high degree of manipulation in real time, And by using MIDI, I can, even with one note or one, I could say one pulse. I don't want to use the term note, because myself, it is kind of pulse of trigger. With one trigger, I can have only two information, okay, pitch and velocities, maybe a MIDI channel. But these two information is a massive for me. These two values own a lot of meaning,
Right.
So we can alter this in real time. We can give a different I could say, interpretation on stage, and this is really powerful, you know.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting way to put it. That what you're doing is you have these values, and you're choosing to interpret them differently depending on what you're attempting to do on stage. That's really a nice way of thinking about it. So I want to ask you about some other things. First of all, I'm kind of blown away by the fact that you went to school for biology.
Yeah.
You love doing, making tracks, and I assume you were even performing at that time?
Yeah, a little bit. I was, I have, I will make a big confession now. I was at this moment, I was a DJ, you know,
Okay.
and yeah, it's
the terrible
really,
confession.
yeah, not so terrible, but yeah. For me, I know you know me a bit, and today I couldn't do that. I'm really respectful with all DJs everywhere because yeah, it is a big work.
Right.
But myself, I really need to to alter sequences and my music and stuff I'm playing a lot more. I was at some point a bit frustrated by DJing. I was really happy because I could listen a lot of music and play with it, but at some point I couldn't express myself. Maybe I have too much things to say. Maybe I don't know.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Well,
so yeah.
But so how did you go from a guy that was that had studied biology to the guy who could make a MIDI controller with 100 knobs, and a guy who was doing first programming with generator and reactor, and then eventually a Max programmer? How did you make that leap? Because that seems like there's an awful lot to learn from point A to point B. You had to learn at least some amount of electronics. You had to learn some amount of programming. You obviously already had chops musically, but you had to somehow integrate all these things together. How did you manage that? How were you able to learn all of these things?
Yeah, looking back, my past is sometimes a bit strange for me because I could say, yeah, how did I make that, you know? But it didn't take only 1 year. And at first, I was really interested by programming. So in France, I couldn't make study like biology plus programming. So I was programming beside my study, you know.
I see.
So
sure.
yeah, I was already programming in C or C++ at this moment for some other stuff. So I started by this entry point, I could say, and then I tried to make some stuff with Arduino at this moment. So with Arduino and MIDI box frameworks. At first, I started by learning electronic stuff, but yeah, it takes a while to learn by myself. But at some point, when you are really passionate, I think it can even be kind of obsessive at some point, and you can read books like you can breathe, you know. So I started by making electronics hardware, and then I was really interested by processing and generative art related stuff.
Right.
So yeah, from C++ to Java, yeah, I could manage that quite easily.
Sure.
And then when I started to play with modular frameworks like generator which was a kind of precursor of reactor.
Right.
Generator was really amazing for me, as Reason was with all these wires,
Right.
It put a lot of reality and physical world into the computer, like physical computing and stuff like that. So I was really, really involved in that at this moment. And then, with Max MSP was, I could say, the natural way for me, the natural way to go.
Yeah, the natural progression, yeah. A lot of times I hear people sort of like express concern when they work with something like Reactor or Max or PD or whatever, that they feel like it's not really programming, like if I was doing something in C++ or Java. But you actually have gone kind of the other way. You started off in these lower level languages, but it seems like a lot of the work you do now is focused on higher level languages. You have the experience with C++ and with Java. Do you just find it more creative to work with modular systems, or does it inspire you in some specific way? Why do you choose to work with modular stuff?
Yeah, I think this is because I need more intuitivity in my stuff. So C++ programs can own a lot of classes, a lot of stuff, and at some point I had to make some drawings. I wouldn't say I was maxifying stuff, but maybe why I was interested in some libraries to make some drawings of my classes.
Sure.
And there are a lot of libraries making that, and at some point I really found Max MSP a lot more intuitive, because I could start patching, start programming like that, and eventually 2 months later I could find all my logic just by looking at the screen. And when I had to do that with C++ programs, it was, for me, I could say, it was really a mess, Sure. Sometimes it was, I had to read a lot of documentation, stuff like that, and it was too, I could say, I was too far from my goal,
Right.
With Max, I can be a lot more focused on my goal, on my even if I sometimes if I can program with JavaScript inside Max, or maybe in playing with shaders when making visuals, but everything is embedded in one patch, or eventually a Max project, and I can really organize all my stuff like that, and it is very more intuitive for me. I guess this is the reason.
For me, one of the big differences was that when you're working with something like C++, or even like processing, there's always this situation where you have to stop for a second and compile your work. Exactly. And that to me was always a real speed bump. I always felt like that would stop my flow of energy in a way. Mm. But also, it's interesting you say this thing about having to come back and look at the work and try and sort of decode your own work.
Yeah, exactly.
That is something that I have a very particular Max patching style. And when people ask me why I do things the way I do, I say, well, it's because I may have to come back and look at this Max patch 5 years from now, mm-hmm. and I want to be able to make sense of it, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I really have always liked about visual programming languages, and it sounds like it's something that echoes with you as well. Well, that's very interesting. Now, another thing is that kind of in conjunction with this, and it's sort of an extension of the the protodeck work, you started working with microprocessors, and recently you actually even had a book published by Pact called Programming Arduino in C.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be an early reader of that, and if anything, I was kind of blown away by the amount of information, the number of different things you were willing to approach in that one book. So it was, in a way, it was like a view inside your head, because there was, there's discussions of electronics, there's discussions of the Arduino, there's discussions of interfacing the Arduino with Macs and with processing and other systems. And in reading that, I sort of felt like I had a sense of who you were by the things that you embraced. Now, what is it about... there's a lot of microprocessor systems right now. What is it about the Arduino that you specifically like? And also, in this time when conceivably you could just hook buttons up to the Arduino or something and never have to expose yourself to timing chips or logic chips, you still choose to use those on some occasion. How have you decided? How have you personally decided to do to use certain technologies sometimes and other technologies other times?
You mean only for Arduino? Or
well, no, I'm talking in general, but the book, the Arduino book, certainly shows us that you have a lot of breadth. You make decisions. And I'm curious about how you make those decisions. How is it that you decide to use, say, a logic chip rather than doing logic inside of an Arduino? Why is it that you choose to use an Arduino instead of a Raspberry Pi? Or why do you choose to use any of it rather than just doing it on your laptop?
Okay.
It's a very messy question, I know, but if you'll humor me a little.
Not that messy. Maybe my answer will be much more messy,
Oh, perfect.
So that could match. I played a lot with Raspberry Pi too. I didn't write a lot about it because for me it is like I could say like having a micro computer. I could say. I mean a small computer, And if I want to use computer logic, I have my laptop. So if I want to make some hardware like controllers or eventually a nose machine, drone machine, like that, something like that, I don't want to, I could say, to minimize my computer programming. So using Raspberry Pi for me would not be interesting. If I want to use computer-like processors, I can use my laptop, which is much more powerful,
Sure.
And using Arduino is like I have a kind of set of constraints, and this Arduino can only do, I could say, a lot of things, but a smaller set of things than a Raspberry Pi. But on the opposite view, I could say with an Arduino, I can be more safe, because I don't have an operating system in an Arduino, sort of. But I have only a program looping every time, and it can do that really on a really reliable way. And when I'm using an Arduino, it is basically for this purpose. I always said and also wrote that if I'm using if I want to make a remote controller, something like that, for playing my computer, or eventually to have a small machine, I want it to be the most, I could say, stupid. not maybe this is not the right term in English, but I could say.
No, I think it's pretty much the right term.
Okay.
I think it's fine.
I wrote that in a free ebook I just republished a couple of months ago about making user interface. And if you want to use a computer to produce sounds, and if you want to use an hardware controller to remote control this computer, you have to make this controller the most stupid as you can, because all will be contained in your protocol. So the hardware controller have to match your own needs on stage. And actually, I could say my needs are only to push some buttons, to trigger some sequences, to alter some values. And this controller don't have to know even why why I push this button. It just have to handle my action, you know.
Right.
And I think Arduino is perfect for this.
Yeah,
and,
that's really interesting you say that, because I noticed that for a while there was some desire to build a lot of smart into controllers. And I think particularly of like the Lemur controller, where it had physical models in it and it had timers in it. And I know some people did some really amazing work with that. But for me, I never wanted my physics model to be in my controller.
Yeah, okay.
And I never wanted my timers to be in the controller. It didn't make sense to me, and so I completely understand what you're saying, and that also makes sense to why the Arduino would be so compelling, because it's not trying to be a computer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this simple fact make it very, very reliable, you know.
Right.
And yeah, we have if you have a nice, I could say, firmware or maybe user program on the Arduino, the part you can program, you are really solid on stage.
Right.
You know, and yeah, I need that for my own creation, because I need to be trusty with everything I make, and yeah, in case yeah, I really need to be, I could say, reassured. You know,
right.
Yeah, it is kind of, yeah.
Well, one of the things that we've been dancing around is something I'm really curious about. You build hardware, you do workshops, you write books. If I read right, I think you're either have just started or about to start a residency somewhere in France. You offer workshops via Skype, I think. You have another book that just came out about Max for Live. You're an Ableton certified trainer. Do you ever sleep?
Yeah, sometime.
Sometimes.
Yeah, you know, yeah, you know, I could say probably it is a kind of obsession, and maybe this is the reason why I'm trying to explore more and more. And I think even writing books and I could say giving some courses at the art school here in Marseille in France, everything like that is the same matter for me, the same object, you know.
Sure.
I think everything is really related, and for me this is a kind of creation process. And when I'm giving courses, even technical courses about maybe warping in Ableton Live or some kind of presets, tricky presets, I think this is a kind of creation moment, you know.
Right.
And discussing with people when I'm trying to learn things from people, and when those people try to learn things from me, I think all these discussions are like creation, you know, like creating things. And for me, this is really natural to even to write books, because I want to share my stuff with people, with a lot of people. I want to be able to discuss with them. And for me, writing books is like putting things in your mind on a paper at some point, and it helps people, but also it helps me to, I could say, to make a kind of big list of statements related to my creation.
Sure, it brings order to the things in your own mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Now, one thing I know so I do a lot of writing for the cycling site as well as for other places, and one of the things I notice is that oftentimes doing writing will cause me to learn more in depth about things that I only knew on the surface. But in order to do a good job of writing, I have to educate myself further in whatever I'm writing about. To what extent do you use your writing as sort of like a tool to help you focus on some particular part of your work? Or do you tend to write about things that you already really know well?
Yeah, every time I am. I agree with what you just said about the fact you have to explore deeper the matter you are writing about. I could say I'm every time at the limit, you know.
Right.
I could say at the limit, at the border, because I'm really interested by I could say interface between things.
Sure.
I could say interface like hardware interface, but even in creation interface, you know, I like to push my own limits of knowledge, especially, and of creation too. So when I'm writing about something, I could say I already know a lot about that object, but I want to go further. And as you said, I have to push my knowledge a little bit further, and then I can make maybe a book, you know.
Right.
So yeah, I had some people saying I wrote my Max for Life book. I could say very too much fast.
Oh, right, yeah.
But yeah. Actually, I wrote it in about 1 week, you know.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't. Obviously, I didn't learn Max for Life in 1 week.
Right.
I tested it even in Max for Life beta version and stuff like that during about 2 years or maybe one more.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah.
You were one of the first people with your fingers in it. I remember that.
Yeah. I played a lot with it because it was like a dream for me to have Max inside Ableton Live. It was just a dream. I'm dreaming again when I'm using it today, you know.
Sure.
So yeah, it is really powerful. So
now talking about pushing the envelope or pushing yourself to the edge, you have recently started doing a lot of work with visuals. And exploring a lot of new avenues, or, you know, in some cases taking existing avenues and pushing them really hard. What are the areas of visual work that you're finding fascinating right now?
I could say I'm really interested by a very minimalistic visual, because we can really push some limits of our eye by watching them. I'm really interested by particles, you know, and because when I'm playing my music, my sounds, I want to have some audio-reactive stuff. So I want to have built previously a system that can be, I could say, living on its own, you know.
Sure.
And I want to alter this system, this visual system, by playing my music. But on stage, I never play directly with visuals, you know. I'm playing with my sounds, and the sound can alter visuals. So I'm really fascinated by particle systems because they are really, really, I could say, expressive.
Right.
You know, maybe this is a kind of comeback to my first studies about biology. You know, like particles are like molecules or
like
atoms,
cells. Yeah,
atoms, you know.
I was wondering the same thing. When you mentioned it, I was like, well, it's interesting that you would have biology on one end and particle systems on the other.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess there is a bridge between them, a natural bridge, and I'd like to explore further this kind of visuals, you know. So when I'm making visuals like that for my latest project, which is named Alpha, I'm trying to explore particle systems in, I could say, in a more rhythmic and IDM stuff on stage.
Sure.
I don't want to make an installation with it for the moment, I could say, at the moment. But I want to be able to play a lot of rhythmic stuff, electronic music stuff by using particle systems, because I'm actually I saw a lot of visuals more related with I could say surfaces, you know, shapes, but field shape.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm really interested by altering my visuals by using forces and not maybe the size of different objects.
Right.
You know, I have a lot of particles. I have a lot of dusts in the void, into the void. You know, like that.
Right.
And you can really alter it by using only forces. And at some point, you can alter forces, and maybe the system can react on a different way you thought about. You know, and I like to be, I could say, I like to discover new interpretations that my visual system can do from my sounds, you know.
Right.
It is kind of partner on stage for me. My visuals are kind of partner, I could say.
Yeah, that's actually interesting because oftentimes when there's visuals on stage, it seems so necessary to interact with them that sometimes if it's a one-person show, the music can suffer because you're focused on trying to do compelling visuals. And so that's actually a really interesting approach, is to build a system that's going to be your on-stage partner. Yeah. Very cool. One thing I want to just touch on before we go. You are one of the people that I would say is a person who lives on the internet. For the longest time, I didn't even know where you were. I had some kind of assumption that maybe you were in Berlin or maybe in Barcelona. I didn't even think that you might be in France. When I think of where you are, I tend to think more of you being in forums and on Facebook and Twitter. I tend to think of you as a person who lives on the internet more almost than in real life. I hope that doesn't sound like I'm putting you down. I'm not. Rather, I'm kind of fascinated with how you see the internet world as being part of your personal and your creative world. I mean, how do you make yourself available to the world without being overwhelmed by it? And also, how do you get like emotional satisfaction by spending most of your, or doing much of your interaction via the internet?
Yeah, it is. I like this question because this is one of my question, I could say too. The, progressively, I need to be, I could say, more in real life. This is not because I'm not in real life, or I wasn't in real life, but internet for me is the another interface to be available for people. So I have a lot of activities on internet. As you said, I can give some courses by using Skype. I made a big Max MSP courses only on Skype with a guy in Switzerland, and yeah, it was really interesting. But at some point, I need to be more. I could say to give more on-site and more presence courses, and I can prove that because yeah, I just have started to rent a place in Marseille where I am living currently, you know, and that place will be both my office, my atelier. I don't know the word in English, you know, but I guess you understood. And that will be also the place where I will give my Ableton Live course, Max, and eventually processing courses, you know. Right. So yeah, I am actually currently at a particular point of my life where when I need to be more to I could say to be more nearer from people, you know. Sure. But I could say physically. I mean, right. Because internet was and is a nice way to spread your knowledge and your creation. But I guess it has maybe I could say it has made me a bit more visible, you know. And right. Without this, I wouldn't have that visible today. And yeah, this is a nice way for meeting people, for being part of communities. Yeah, we can say that. I could say you can say that too. Right. But yeah, obviously. But now I'm really interested by making some workshops, more. I could say in real. I don't know. It is a bit difficult in English for me to talk about that.
Right. Yeah.
Because
well,
it's a
difficult subject, right? But you're saying that you're feeling the draw to do more things in real life rather than in virtual life.
Yeah. But you know, I wanted to add just something about that. When you are starting something new, like maybe I did. A couple of years ago, I mean, me starting making music and starting to take things more personally, you know, trusting my art and stuff like that. At some point, you need to be more visible because you want to play maybe in some festivals, stuff like that. Not just for playing in big festival, but for meeting people, for sharing your own arts, maybe your own feelings, you know.
Well, and learning more and learning from other people's experience as well.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe when you have to do, when you want to do that, when you are not alone. You are. Yes, there are a lot of people wanting to do that too. So maybe internet is a really nice way for people to talk about them. And I mean, even for artists, I know a lot of artists that only want to be, I could say, in real life. But I think internet can open a lot of new doors and can also inspire us. And yeah, I could say I want today to be more visible in the real world, but I will keep internet from as I could say a universal atelier for me. You know,
Right,
like
right.
like a big a big reactor of creation. You know.
Sure. My goodness. Well, Julian, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you being willing to do this on short notice, but also to kind of dive into my crazy world of questions. I know it wasn't necessarily the easy questions, but I think we really explored some interesting stuff. So, what do you have anything coming up that you'd like to tell people about?
Yeah, I'm currently working on a nice project that and it involves two I could say two objects, one installations and one live performance I will make in Monaco in 1 month, end of March, and the installation will be visible 2 weeks in London. It is a kind of remote project like that. I like this. I like this, and I'm working on my particle systems for my alpha live set, and I just hope to be able to play it in. Yeah, I have a lot of opportunities to play it in some festivals. So I really hope to meet people and to talk about their art and my art in some cities like Toronto for Mutech or stuff like that, you know. So yeah, I'm really working for that, and I just hope to meet you and all a lot of people.
Yeah, I was going to say, given how much interaction you and I have had, it's surprising that we've not yet met. So I look forward to that as well.
Yeah, I hope.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you so much, Julian. I appreciate it. And
Thanks to you.
Have a great rest of your day today.
Okay. Bye, Darwin.
Bye. I want to again thank Julian for helping us out with the broadcast. He did it on really short notice and really kind of helped me get another podcast out this weekend. Hopefully you'll take the opportunity to go over to julianbale.net and check out some of his work, as well as some of the information he's always willing to share with people. Otherwise, I will see you next week with another podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.